This training does not include guidance on any of your business processes. We know that a lot of you guys have different paperwork that must be included within your overall management of your contracts, but this will not cover that. So your policies or regulations that govern your particular district's way of doing business, we will not be going over that. So we'll try to keep things general so that you can utilize RMS to fit your district's needs. And so that's pretty much what we wanted to cover in our housekeeping section. So about this course is for district admins, so those who have been assigned at the district level for managing the official duties in some sphere in an admin capacity. If you've been assigned the permissions and roles of a district admin, and as a district admin, the RMS general user population will look to you for guidance in all facets regarding RMS, from general rules to report creation. Basically, as such, our goal for this training is to equip you with some of the skills to assist in troubleshooting and resolving some of the frequently asked questions. Train the Trainer course is designed and intended for those district administrators that are in this role. There are no prerequisites for this course. However, attendees are expected to be very familiar with navigating RMS, entering data, and knowledge of governing regulations within your district. Attendees should expect to gain a deeper understanding of how RMS works and why RMS works the way it does, and gain some insight into how to teach their fellow RMS users. The topics that we'll be covering today, we've identified 13 of them, 13 modules where users most often have questions on interactions. So those are going to be setting up prime contractors and subcontractors in the district office, the SAM change to replace DUNS with UEI, the adding a staff and defining staff roles, assigning PII access for RMS users, PCF documents, document package exports, how to filter selection views on certain modules, how to set up contracts, the SDEF module, RMS P2 interface, schedules, activity schedule, milestone schedule, placement schedule, feature schedule, creating custom reports and queries, and the closeout tab. So we're just going to go ahead and jump into it. Our first module that we're going to cover is setting up prime contractors and subcontractors in the district office. We will be doing some live demos as well, so we'll go in to the program and take a look at some of those areas. The prime contractors work directly with the government. They manage any subcontractors and are responsible for ensuring that the work is completed as defined in the contract. In general terms, if a contractor is responsible for planning, leading, executing, supervising, and inspecting a building construction project, their responsibility extends from the beginning to the end of the project, regardless of its scope. To become a prime contractor, you must first register your business with the System for Award Management, or SAM. So that's the general overview for a prime contractor. The information added to the district office is added to the RMS database. Once the prime contractor is entered into the system's database, the prime contractor can be added to the individual record. So the user essentially will start off in the district office in government mode. They'll select the desired contract and then the prime contractor modules once the district module has been filled out. Once you've selected the prime contractor module, you'll be brought to this particular screen that'll show the actual government entry portions. Contractor cannot add into the information in the top section, but they will be able to fill out all the remaining information below. Typically, the contractor will populate the fields starting in the second section and throughout the rest of the section all the way down to the bottom. This module exists in both RMS 3.0 government mode and RMS 3.0 contractor mode, but data in the second section, as mentioned, and down are mostly entered by the contractor. The prime contractor name and information should be added to the prime contractors list in the district office, and then it can be added or selected to the contract that you're currently on. The responsibility code for the prime contractor is always going to be prime. So when you look that up, you'll see prime there, and essentially you'll see two tabs, the prime contractor info and the contractor staff. When taking a look at the screen, you'll notice a couple of key areas that we've noticed that cause some confusion. Prevent contractor mode access. Basically, this prevents the contractor from accessing contractor mode for this contract. Used when there is a dispute or termination or other reason to prevent access. So essentially, when you see that button up there, prevent contractor mode access, this option prevents them from accessing the contract. The government will enter the prime contractor's NAICS code, or North American Industry Classification System, if available, and the DUNS code on the government side. The NAICS code for construction can be found on the following link, and that's naics.com. So essentially, when you go to naics.com, you'll see this particular site, and essentially you can go ahead and search for the NAICS there, or their SIC code. You can also do a company lookup, and then you can pull their NAICS code after you do the company lookup as well. So that's just general information for the government personnel that's managing that particular contract. Any staff assigned to the prime contractor will have access to the contracts that the prime contractor is assigned to if their administrators are given the user roles. So essentially, when the government goes in, they enter that first staff member for the prime contractor. The government will enter that prime contractor's first user as an admin. And after that, the contractor is then responsible for adding more staff on their side. It is recommended that the contractor set up user roles to assign to non-admin users as well. It is usually the job of the USH representative to assign only the first contractor staff and then make them an administrator, as mentioned before. From that point forward, the contractor will add additional staff to the prime contractor staff and assign user roles as needed. It's pretty much, it's easy for the contractors to make every staff an administrator. However, this is kind of dangerous and we recommend against it. Essentially, any administrator can add and remove additional staff and modify all contracts that the prime contractor has access to. So to avoid this, you should advise your contractor if you're working with a particular contractor, or you should advise the government personnel working with that contractor to basically set up user roles to limit access and allow for greater control of the data. We're definitely getting into a more security conscious way of doing things, and we just want to make sure to convey that to our contractors as well. So if the prime contractor you're looking for does not show up in the prime contractor list, then essentially you got to go ahead and enter them inside the district office. All right, so let me go ahead and pull that up right now just so we're clear. So most of you already know this screen. So this is our map screen that we get into. And from here, we can go ahead and choose our district. For me, for my test, I'm going to choose our testing district. And I'm going to go ahead and log into our testing district here. And once I'm in testing district, I'm able to see my contracts and I'm able to see my recent contracts that I've been in. For us, we're going to start off with district office and click on district office. And then in district office, we'll select prime contractors in the second row. And from there, we'll see our list of prime contractors. From here, we can add our prime contractor, or we can edit a particular prime contractor or delete a prime contractor. This is the main district list for the prime contractor. So when you create a contract, you'll be able to select this data, this contract, and add them to whatever other contracts within your list that you're creating. So essentially, you'll have your main contractor, prime contractor that you're adding, and then you'll be able to add them later to any other contracts that you create. And so as mentioned before, you have your contractor staff here, and then you have your contracts that you can assign them to there as well. We also have our data that's entered up here, our prime contractor ID, we have our contractor short name. We'll get into those a little bit later, our NAICS code and cage code and our DUNS and UEI. We'll get into those a little bit later though. All right, so as mentioned before, you'll go to the district office, and then from the district office, you'll go ahead and add that prime contractor. You'll notice, though, that there is no save button, and that's one thing we want to bring up early. This often confuses users. Essentially, the back button functions as the save button. So just click on the back button, and your data will be automatically saved, and so there's no reason to worry about a particular back button. You might get this question a lot. I'm looking for a save button. There's no save button. The back button functions as the save button. As mentioned before, you'll go through and you'll click on add to add a new contractor to the district roles area, the district office area. You'll go through and you'll add that particular contractor's information, the prime contractor. We're just entering a test company right now. Once you've entered that particular test company, it'll go ahead and create that prime contractor, adding all the information that we have here. We have our UEI. There's nothing entered yet, so we're getting an entry error. We're getting a warning this screen because it's an optional field that we can enter. And then we can see we have no DUNS. Any DUNS number is pretty much going to be a historical value from this point forward. We'll mention that when we get into that section as well. Once the prime contractor's information is set up, they're free to work on the subcontractor's information as well. So essentially, you'll click on the administrator tab and then click on the subcontractors module once you choose your contract. The prime contractor is responsible for the control and coordination of all of their subcontractors. So the subcontractors module is where the prime contractor can maintain their subs for the job site by tracking their performance and compliance on the job site to meet contract requirements. The subcontractors module is linked to various other modules in RMS 3, such as daily reports and pay activities. Subcontractor responsibility codes can be imported into RMS 3 via Primavera by going to the Import Export tab and choosing the NAS SDEF module, or they can be manually entered from the subcontractors module. If imported from Primavera, users can proceed to the subcontractor screen to fill in the full name and amount subcontracted for the first tier subs and other pertinent information as well. One thing to keep in mind is that the subcontractors module is linked to various modules in RMS 3, such as daily reports and pay activities. So what this means is that some of this information corresponds to other modules, and as a result, will not allow you to delete data until the appropriate subcontractor is removed. So we'll take a look at that a little bit later. You'll notice you can click on the add button on the subcontractor section. It'll prompt you for the 4-digit contractor code. Once you enter that 4-digit alphanumeric code, that particular code is unique, by the way, and identifies each subcontractor. This 4-digit code is found on the SDEF or some other scheduling package that the contractor may be using, as mentioned previously. However, if the contractor is not using a scheduling package, then they can just create an arbitrary code to map to their contractors. Now, keep in mind that the code should follow that particular contractor for the life of the contract. As you go through, you'll enter the contractor's code, as mentioned before, on the add screen. And then once you enter their code, you'll then be able to enter the contractor pertinent information. Now, the contractor's short name, you can enter an abbreviated name for the subcontractor to be used in reports with limited space. So this field is limited to 20 characters. Some people try to type a little bit more and they wonder why it's not showing up. So just for reference, it's only 20 characters for that field. The contractor full name, you can enter the subcontractor's full name in that field. So that field is limited to 60 characters. So obviously you can enter a little bit more data there. The address, you can enter the subcontractor's mailing address. Trade, you can go ahead and click on the box and select the subcontractor's trade from the displayed lookup list. If the applicable trade cannot be found in the table can be updated in the district library contractors trades module by a district administrator. So let me pull that up real quick because that's one of the other items that pops up sometimes. So you can go to district library and then you can go to contractor trades. And then this is where you'll enter the trades that'll pop up here for that particular trades list that you see right next to it. So if there's a trade that's missing that you don't have, you can go ahead and enter that trade, and then the trade will then show up in the pop-up list for you. The RMS 3 and government mode, the controlled unclassified information, which is listed as well. You can go ahead and see the information POC, office phone, office fax. You can enter the subcontractor's port of contact information there. The subcontractor amount, you can enter the full amount assigned or allowed for the subcontractor. This is required by the Prompt Payment Act and is used in the progress payment request. So essentially, if they're going to be using that, they'll need to enter that information there. The contractor is a small business. You can check this box if applicable. Insurance is required. Check this box to track insurance validity dates. To delete a subcontractor, simply select the contractor from the screen list and then just click on the delete button and you'll delete the subcontractor. Now, deleting a subcontractor is as simple as selecting them from the list as mentioned. Note that RMS 3 does not allow deletion of subcontractors if there are records associated with them, as mentioned before. Basically, when you try to delete a subcontractor that has other items associated with it, you'll get a message that pops up to let you know that labor hour records are associated with this subcontractor, so this subcontractor cannot be deleted. So sometimes you'll get a user that tries to delete a subcontractor and they'll wonder why they can't be deleted. That is usually the case. They're linked to something else. And so you'll have to go in and delete those other required links before you can remove the subcontractor. If the payroll's ending day of the week is changed mid-contract, then duplicate payrolls could be generated as well. It is recommended that once the contract starts, this field does not change. So the quick reminder, the payroll ending date must be set. You want to make sure that that is set. Let me jump into RMS. So as mentioned before, if you're coming in from the map screen, you'll choose your particular district, log into your district. Once you're logged into your district, you'll then choose your particular contract. Once your contract is selected, you can go over to subcontractors, and then you can edit a subcontractors, my test subcontractor here, but you can go in and start to enter data into that subcontractor, making sure to set all their pertinent information, select their trade. Okay, and then once you're all done, just click on back and it'll go ahead and save that information, and it'll update on the screen as well. So as mentioned before, the main gotcha for this particular screen, the subcontractor screen that we've seen, is that either the trade is not listed, so you have to enter the trade in the district admin module, or the user is trying to remove a subcontractor and that subcontractor is linked to other data. So those are the two main gotchas for that. All right, we've reached the end of that particular module. Let me go ahead and unmute everyone, and then we can take any questions. The floor is open for any questions. If there's no questions, then I'll move on. Over.
On entering the payroll. So if the contractor leaves site, is there a way to not have to put those in? Because you said once you enter their information, it should remain the same throughout the contract. But if they leave site, like I'm here in Alaska, so we have like winter shutdown. So is there a way not to have to put those payrolls in when they're not on site?
So essentially the question I'm hearing is that if you have a contractor and you've initially entered their data, you've entered their particular subcontractor amount, and essentially you don't want to be able to track their particular payrolls any longer. Is there a way to do that? Usually, as long as if the contractor has left the particular site and there's no reason to track the contractor, you'll still leave the contractor in for any historical reference that needs to be made. However, you just won't track that particular contractor's payroll. There should be one last payment for the contractor, whoever they were, and then that would be their particular final payment. So you wouldn't continue to keep tracking their particular payments.
Yeah, for that particular case in Alaska where you have a winter shutdown, what you could do is the day of the shutdown, you could put as their last day on site, and then RMS would no longer ask you for their payrolls. And then when you come back, you would just remove that entry.
When you remove that, saying they're not on site anymore, it repopulates asking for all those payrolls.
I see what you're saying. Let us take a look at that specific question, and we'll try to get back to you with a solution.
Thank you.
One of my other associates just put in the chat as well. There is also a button here, as you see on the screen, it's called payroll required. And you could uncheck that as well. And then that'll remove their payroll required option as well. We'll have to double check just to make sure that fully addressed your issue. Over.
Okay. Yes. When you uncheck that, then it stopped asking you for it. But once they return back to the site after that winter shutdown and you re-click that box, then it automatically repopulates all the ones that you really didn't need.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah, so definitely, just like Bosley said, we'll probably have to take a look at that and double check and see if that's the correct behavior that was intended. So let me go ahead and note that down.
Thank you.
Back on that question, I have the opposite problem. I have a contractor on site. The contract has been extended, but then it's not allowing us. We're allowing them to enter any payrolls, and we've fixed everything in terms of like the milestones and the subcontractors, but it's still not allowing them to add any payrolls after coming back on site or adding time to the contract.
For your particular issue, I think the best option would be to open up a ticket in the help desk, and then we can go through and try to track through your particular issue. I think we'll probably do the same thing for the previous question as well, just to make sure that we can follow that all the way through.
Thank you.
Hi, I think I had a similar issue with both of them. My subcontractor, she says that she puts the end date in every time they stop and put no payroll till further notice. And somehow she makes it work. But also for the other situation, trying to enter the payroll, it might have something to do with the schedule and the milestones. If you have the end date in there, and if you have the scheduled end date, but you put the actual end date in and the BOD date in, it won't let you submit any more payroll. I don't know if that might be your problem.
No, well, I thought that was, and I removed it, and we did a schedule update, and now we just left it as scheduled date, and it's still not allowing them to. So I'll open a ticket and.
Thank you very much for that additional information. Definitely appreciate it. We've got it on the recording as well, so we can refer back to that. Go ahead and open up a ticket so we can go through and track that. You know, we might definitely have some other ideas to try. So if you open up a ticket, our staff will be able to walk through that scenario and see if we can find the best course of action for you. Let's go ahead and we're going to proceed forward with the next module of the training, and that will be the GSA SAM change to replace DUNS. So in this case, it's the unique entity identifier, which is getting replaced. I'm just going to read this because it's essentially a legalese. So on April 4th, 2022, GSA transitioned away from the DUNS number and began using the unique entity identifier for purposes of registering in SAM.gov. The UEI is owned by the federal government and is generated in SAM.gov. Some government contractors will still require a company to have a DUNS number, which you may already have. If not, you can apply for a free DUNS number. The DUNS number is globally recognized and utilized for contract checks, compliance checks, business credit and funding, and other business use cases with 90% of Fortune 500 companies. The next steps to attain, in most cases, it'll be helpful to register for your business's UEI and for the business to have a DUNS number. Request one for free if your business does not already have one. To register for the unique identifier for some government contracts, UEI, visit SAM.gov. So essentially, you'll just be going to SAM.gov. It'll explain the information to you as previously mentioned before, how to find certain entity, how to find your unique identity, your unique entity ID. How do I get a unique entity ID? So all the things you just talked about. So if your staff member is going through and they're trying to find that, that's one resource for them as well. And then if they don't have a DUNS, they can go to the Get It Done and Bradstreet DUNS number. We are not really allowing you to enter a DUNS any longer for the future, but for historical references, they have their history, which is tracked if they've already entered a DUNS number pre-cutoff. So all the information is tracked from here as well. And you can go through and get your DUNS number, but the DUNS number will pretty much be utilized for financial references outside of RMS. Within RMS, we'll be using the UEI. That's pretty new just this year. So hopefully, if anything comes up, we'll be able to provide a little bit more information. We have a few more documentation pieces of information that we can provide to you as well. For additional information on the change in UEI, you can visit this page, which is on SAM.gov. There's also an additional page as well. We'll get to that one a little bit later, and I'll show you the document. Essentially, what changed in RMS? If the contractor organization is currently registered in SAM.gov with either an active or inactive registration, they have already been assigned a UEI. I know that a few people mentioned that, hey, this contractor is inactive. Even if they're inactive, they've already been assigned a UEI if they're in SAM. The UEI is viewable on the contractor's entity's registration record in SAM.gov. To learn how to view the UEI, you can go ahead and see this particular guide. How can I view my UEI, my unique entity ID as well? If you have questions about UEIs or the recent UEI transition, that are not answered in the facts or in the other information available, you can also go to fsd.gov. You may contact the fsd.gov by calling or choosing create an incident or engaging in live chat as well. So we basically take you to the Federal Service Desk, fsd.gov, and from there you can go ahead and click on the help on UEI transition. And when you click on help on UEI transition, you can essentially register for additional assistance, and they'll pretty much walk you through and give you all the information that you need. They already give you some of the easy to find information from sam.gov and all the different URLs here that you can find. Just to clarify what happened, the DUNS number was not removed, but now it is view only, so you won't be entering a DUNS number any longer. The UEI must be entered, so from this point forward, the contractor must enter a UEI, and the UEI is updated immediately after data is entered, but the user must log out and log back in to see those particular changes. When you go ahead and log into the system, you'll go ahead and log in normally. You'll hit the map screen. So essentially you'll go to the district office, and once you get to the district office, you will then navigate to the prime contractor screen as we've been to before. You can go ahead and choose your prime contractor. Every active contractor listed as a prime contractor will have to add the UEI number. You can highlight and select to edit that particular contractor. One additional information is where do I find my UEI? That is a document that's listed in a PDF. So with that particular document that pops up, that's this document right here. If you go to that particular link, it'll pop up this document, and this document will walk you through how to find your unique entity identifier. And this one, the fact sheet that's provided to help you navigate that as well. So we are trying to make sure that everyone has all the resources that they need. Like I said, this particular transition was just happening April 4th, 2022. So this year. So we realized that everyone will just be transitioning, and there's going to be a lot of questions coming up regarding UEI. So as new contracts are awarded to new contractors, definitely UEI will be a big part of it, of that transition. All right, so the DUNS UEI, you'll notice there's two new fields on the screen. So the new field added, the UEI number. This requires manual input for all contractors. You can verify in RMS that the prime contractor has a UEI number and a read-only DUNS number. The DUNS will only show for historical purposes. So this is a read-only field, and it will only show for pre-April 2022 contracts. So if it's a brand new contract that's been awarded, that particular contract will not have a DUNS associated with it due to the fact that the DUNS field is not editable. So while the prime contractor UEI has been updated, the individual contracts themselves will need to be updated as needed. They'll each need to be updated individually as per the requirements. So essentially, to update these individual contracts, you'll go ahead and log in, you'll select your contract, you'll then go to administration tab, and then you'll click on the prime contractor button. Once you've clicked on that button, you'll then transition over to the prime contractor screen. You'll select copy UEI and contractor information. Another pop-up will display. You'll find and select the prime contractor, and then you'll go ahead and select OK. And then the UEI will be updated, and then this particular contract will be complete. So it starts up in district office and in prime contractor, and in our prime contractor, we'll notice here that we can double click, and then we'll see our UEI information here, our DUNS here for that one CI Inc. I won't change anything on that screen. And then from there, we can select our contract and then select our prime contractor. And then from there, we can go ahead and choose to copy UEI contractor information. We'll find our contractor that we're looking for. And then we can choose OK. And then it'll go ahead and copy their information. In this case, there wasn't any in that particular. And then it'll copy their information into the UEI field. All right, and that concludes the ending of that particular module. I'll open the floor up, and then you guys can go ahead and ask any questions. All right, I don't hear any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and transition to the next module. The next module is contract personnel. So we're going to be adding staff and defining staff roles for contract personnel. So the contract personnel, typically the the district admin adds, edits, and deletes contract user roles in RMS. The district admins have contract user role read-write permission for all contracts in the district. Office admins have rewrite permissions for all contracts attached to their office and have no access for contracts at other offices. District admin typically adds, edits, and removes project delivery team members to and from each contract and assigns them to user roles. Any user with assigned user roles office permission can assign for the office it's given in, and any user can be given district-wide permission with assigned user roles, district, or contract user roles permission. Now you can go ahead and check with your district if you have any questions about this process and or the contract user roles process as a whole. We have included a demo to work through that, and that can be found in the YouTube video that's listed underneath that link. Now, there is a contract personnel area that we will be discussing in this particular module. So what we'll do is we'll log into RMS and open the desired contract. We'll click on the administration tab, then select the contract personnel module. Once that's selected, we can go ahead and assign our project delivery team, our PDT. We can assign user roles inside the contract. The contract personnel contains two data grids, one at the top, one at the bottom. The one at the top is the project delivery team members. So you can add government staff members to contracts and assign user roles to whom will be executing the contract. And the bottom has the contract personnel user roles. You can view user roles from users set up in RMS 3 government mode from here as well. Now, the main question that we usually get for this is, who do I add to the project delivery team? Unfortunately, we can't answer that typically. Delivery teams typically include those professionals involved in the programming, planning, design, and construction of the project. So the size and composition of the project team will vary depending on the extent of the capital design. So the construction budget and the various facets of the project. And this is going to be usually dictated by the project owner. So you might have to seek project owner direction or a particular higher level admin for direction on this. However, for entering the data, we can go over that. We can go ahead and click on the add button, use the search function to locate the staff members. Once you know who they are, to add as a PDT person, then you can click on the staff member's name, click OK, change the staff member's position, title to reflect their role on the contract. For instance, project engineer could have a role set up as a quality assurance rep. You can go ahead and click on the back button to save or commit those changes. And then the new member will be displayed on the project delivery team members tab. Editing a project delivery team member is the same thing. Click on PDT member, click on the edit button, change your position or staff title. That's usually what you're going to be editing for. And then you can go ahead and click the back button to save and commit those changes as well. And then delete, same thing. If that project delivery team member is no longer needed, we can go ahead and delete that particular project delivery team member. All right, so from here, we can go ahead and choose our contract. And we're already on the administration tab. And then for us, we'll be coming to the contract personnel screen. And those will be our project delivery team members, as well as our contract personnel user roles that we'll be accessing. So for our project delivery team members, we can go ahead and add them up here and then select from the list. And once they're selected from the list, we can choose our position. Click back and it'll save our particular personnel to the list. And obviously, if we need to change that personnel's position info, we can change that personnel's position title. And then once we're all done, that person is no longer part of the project delivery team. We can go ahead and delete that personnel from that list. And now that personnel is gone. The main thing that pops up or that we have questions on for PDTs is not really how to add or edit or delete them. It's who to add to it. And for that, you'll probably have to seek project owner help or a more higher up senior staff member to find out who needs to be added to that list. All right, and that concludes that module. We can go ahead and open it up for any questions before moving on to the next module.
Hi, I have a quick question. I'm inputting a project for a project run up by the EPA, and USACE is just doing like the field work and everything like that. We have like, the COR is USACE, the contract is USACE, but the ACO is EPA. I've talked to the ACO, and they said they can't use RMS. But my question is there a way for me to input them as the ACO in contract personnel without them having an account?
No, they'll actually have to have an account. So we'll have to create an account for them so that they can be added. I'll probably switch it over to Bosley and see if Bosley has a particular answer for this particular question, just to make sure that I'm not misleading. Bosley, do you have any input?
You're correct. Yeah, we can create them as a user with their EPA email account, and they could, if they wanted to, actually download RMS and actually get access to the contract also.
A lot of districts, though, don't necessarily like that practice of having customers in there. So I'd make sure to check with your upper management before you do so.
Did that address your concerns?
Yep, I'm good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's go ahead and move to the next module. We're going to be taking a look at the PII access for user RMS and the PII requirements. So appropriate PII training must be maintained to be granted access to RMS, the PII modules for RMS as well. So if the government user has a CAC, a common access card, the PII training is maintained through the yearly UPass required training. So when they log into UPass, they'll get their notifications for training. They'll have to go in and complete their acceptable use policies, their PII, all of the required training for UPass. If the government user does not have a CAC, the user will need to contact their PII district administrator with their UPass expiration date. In RMS, the staff to access contractor payrolls, labor interviews, contractor file, labor folder and payrolls, and PII documents in exported contract files. So that's the personal identifiable information section for RMS. So the modules requiring PII are as follows: access to the contract file, contractor payrolls, and labor interviews. So access to these modules has been limited to users who have completed the UPass PII training. So users that log into RMS using a CAC will have access to these modules. However, RMS 3 in government mode users and RMS 3 contractor users, as far as retaining that type of information, the contractor users are not really associated with that information. So controlled unclassified information users who log in with a username and password must submit PII training certification proof to the PII admin for the user's district to obtain access to this module. So to get access to PII and RMS, you'll have to contact the PII district admin for the district. And there's a list of all of the district PII admins on SharePoint, which is only accessible from a government computer. So a link to this can also be provided from the RMS Support Center. So you can open up a ticket entitled List for PII District Admins to obtain a link to that particular list. So essentially the modules we're referring to are the contract file module. This module will be limited in scope and access to those with PII training, and then also the contractor payrolls module, and then the labor interviews module as well. So you'll see the module requires PII training certifications. You will need to contact your RMS administrator for details about PII training. So the role of the PII administrator is to make sure that yearly PII training is properly maintained. The only way to become a PII administrator is to get approval from the RMS PMO. The administrator will validate the documentation requested from the user and enter the expiration date into RMS in the PII training expiration date box. So as a quick note, the PII expiration dates will only show for government users where the enable non-CAC login has been enabled. Pictured above is the view of a user's staff record showing the PII administration date. If the user is set for a non-CAC login, enter the date by either typing in the date or picking it using the calendar icon to the right. So as you can see, those two areas there, we have the PII, which is highlighted in red on the lower left portion of the screen. And then we have the date PII training expires. That's the select date highlighted kind of in the middle of your screen there with the date selection box. The message received when your PII training is expired or has not been taken in order for the user to continue to have access to the labor interviews or contractor payrolls is noted above. So this message you will receive when your PII training is expired or has not been taken at all. This module requires PII training certification. You will need to contact your RMS administrator for details about PII training. Both CACs and non-CAC users will receive this particular message. And I already showed this particular screen when I popped up in the demo. Non-CAC users who need access to labor interviews or contractor payrolls will get notifications from PII training expiration dates when the expiration date is 30 days, 15 days, 7 days, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 day prior to the expiration date, and again once the date has passed. So we try to be very transparent when we're sending these reminders out to make sure that the user will indeed get that information. So we're very aggressive when we start to send out the reminders, especially for PII, because since the government is becoming more security conscious, we have to make sure to do our due diligence there as well. So in order for the user to continue to have access to the labor interviews or contractor payrolls, the user will need to retake the PII training and provide it to the user's district's PII admin before the expiration date. If the user does not do this, access to those modules will be revoked. So just go ahead and keep that in mind as well. So as mentioned, if we go to payrolls, we'll get this information. We don't have our info set. And if we go back out one, go to RMS staff, the role of the PII administrators to make sure that yearly PII training is properly maintained. And the only way to become a PII administrator is to get approval from the PMO, RMS PMO. The administrator will validate the documentation requested from the user and enter the expiration date into RMS in the PII training expiration date box. So as a quick note, the PII expiration dates will only show for government users where the enable non-CAC login has been enabled. So pictured above is the view of the user's staff. So right here, if I go through and enter my staff info and I pull myself up, okay, so I can see myself, I'm a PII admin, and then I can also set my date for PII trainings as well. So all that information is set up from here. So, and that's what's showing on the actual screen, as you can see there. And then the message that is received when your PII training is expired or has not been taken in order for the user to continue to have access to the labor interviews or contractor payrolls, the user will need to retake the PII training and provide it to the user's district PII admin before the administration date. So if the user does not do this, their access to those modules will be revoked. And then essentially, we do send out email reminders. So non-CAC users who need access to the labor interviews or contractor payrolls will get notifications for PII training expiration dates when the expiration date is 30 days, 15 days, 7 days, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 day prior to the expiration date. And again, once the date has passed. So in order for the user to continue to have access to the labor reviews, the labor interviews or contractor payrolls, the user will need to retake the PII training and provide it to the contractors, provide it to the user's district PII admin before the expiration date. So within the core is becoming a lot more security conscious and security minded. So a lot of these added security features are being put in place to make sure that we are doing as much security first things as we can do. So essentially, moving forward, that's what we're trying to accomplish. So if the user does not do this or does not go through and provide their PII certification testing, access to those modules will be revoked. All right, and then that was the end of that section. So if we have any questions for this particular block, I'll go ahead and open up the floor.
Can you say where the PII admins are located again?
There's actually two locations. So if you're trying to get your PII admin list, you can open up a ticket with the RMS Help Desk and entitle it PII admin list. And essentially what will happen is our staff will go ahead and send you that list. It is a SharePoint document, but it's only accessible to the government users. So you can find it in the government list, but you can only get it by creating a ticket, and our staff will go ahead and respond to that ticket for you. The second way is by going into the RMS staff, and then if you search for your particular user, you'll notice that you are classified as a PII admin down here. So if you know a particular user and you're trying to see if they're classified as a PII admin, and you have the district administrative privilege, you can go ahead and look them up and see if they're classified as a PII admin from this spot down here. So those are the two ways to find your PII admins.
Thank you.
With that, we'll go ahead and move forward to our next module. So our next module is PCF Documents. So we'll be taking a look at that. What is PCF? PCF is Paperless Contract Files, or PCF. It's a secure web-based application. PCF is designed and certified to store official contract files as required per FAR Subpart 4.8 in an electronic centralized depository as a web-based records management application. It's RMA. It is not approved for classified information. So if you have anything that's classified, please do not include it in your document so that it will be sent to PCF. Failure to adhere to this policy is grounds for dismissal in accordance with U.S. Code Title 18-1001. So as a reminder and a quick note, once again, no classified information should be uploaded into RMS and sent to PCF. So you just got to be really careful of that. The RMS and PCF data flow is as follows. RMS has a one-way data flow and allows documents that are generated in RMS to be sent to PCF. PCF is the required repository for all official contract documents. So the contract file documents are automatically placed in the appropriate PCF folder, and they're usually, the folders on their side are usually referred to as cabinets. So if you're on the PCF side and you have a particular cabinet that you're looking for your documents, you'll have to search that on that particular side. Additional documents can be manually added as well. Now, the contract file is where all official documents are stored and uploaded to PCF. You must manually add folders and subfolders after award. So the government signed documents will automatically upload to the correct contract file folder. Contractor signed documents for some modules will have to be manually loaded to the contract file folder as well. So essentially, when you log in, you'll click on administration, and then you'll go to the contract file access area. Once you're at the contract file access area, you will then see the contract file view, which will list the grid, and then the contract file stores all the official documents in RMS and sends to PCF, as you can see from the list. You can collapse or contract the list as well. You can only group by the status or document title. So a quick note, documents deleted from the contract file will also be deleted from the originating document package and vice versa. Documents that have been sent to PCF or ready to send cannot be edited or deleted. So this is one of the gotchas for this area. A lot of people believe that, hey, I sent a document to PCF, I delete the document in RMS, why is it not deleting in PCF? That's not the way it works. If you delete a document within RMS, it will not delete that document in PCF. So please keep that in mind when you're dealing with those users that have those questions as well. You can manually add a document into contract file. So to manually add an official document to a contract file folder, click add and on the contract file view. So you can select the section and add the document by either generating the document or selecting the document from your local file system. Once you've added that particular document, you will then get the contract file view. And within the contract file view, you'll see the PCF edit information that will be displayed. You can select the date of the document, the status, keep not completed. Basically what you'll do is you'll keep it not completed until after the documents are uploaded. So when you upload the document into the actual document package, then and you're all done, then you'll go ahead and set it to the different status. So attached document sections are, you can go ahead and click the select document and upload a document, save on your drive, and just basically you'll make sure the document is signed. Click generate document to generate the document using a Word template from the district library, or you can use RMS document description and the summary of the document is optional as well. So you can go ahead and add a quick summary there. When you edit the document, you'll go through and you'll select the document. The official document can be updated, changed, or deleted prior to clicking on the completed button. So the edit, remove, and view document buttons are enabled. You can click on any of the buttons to take whatever action that is required for this particular document that you're adding. The last steps is to click the completed button, and then if required, you'll select send to PCF. So if sending to PCF, the user will need to sign the document beforehand. So once sent, the document will become read-only. And it is, if the official document is not entered into contract file folder correctly, there's no way to remove it from the database. So if that particular document was not entered correctly, there's no way to remove it from the database. So a corrected document will need to be added and then sent to PCF. So that's one of the gotchas for this as well. The user will say, hey, I added a document, but I made a mistake. You know, can I go ahead and correct it? The answer to that is if it was already marked, completed, ready to send, there's no way to correct it. You're going to go ahead and add a new document, add your corrections to that, and then you'll send that over. So just keep that in mind when you're working with those users as well that are complaining about that particular issue. Under administration, we'll go to the contract file tab. And once we click on that, we're going to go ahead and choose the contract file. We can expand and we can collapse our information here. You can see all of our documents that are listed. And we can see it's grouping by folder and then subfolder. If we don't want those, we can go ahead and click to delete those, and then it'll show all information straight down. So we do have a default grouping when you first come into the screen. It'll show a default grouping of folder information. But if you don't want that folder information, you can go ahead and click to delete these two, and it'll remove that grouping so that you can then go down the list. Once you've found the information that you're looking for, you can go through and you can double click to add that option. You can go through and view the document, you can save a document, and then you can go through the process of editing and preparing that document. Documents associated with daily reports in PCF, the daily report QC PCF status listed on that screen as well. You'll notice that you'll see a couple of different areas that'll pop up. And when you're dealing with those documents, there's a couple of progression notes that we want to make sure that you follow. Many people think that they'll start from the top and then go straight down, but in this case, you'll start in the middle at number 1, the diamond, and then you'll go to number 2 at the bottom, and then number 3 is where you will complete at the top. So this was a specific design requirement that we had, so we just followed the design requirement. But essentially, you'll go in, start at number 1, you'll select the buttons. This section allows you to add, generate, or select documents from this particular module. You can remove, save, and sign the documents. Then you'll move down to number 2. Once the document is added, you'll add your summary of the documents, taking into account the title, the date of the document, and whatever description. And then once you're all done, you'll jump up to number 3. Once the document is added, you'll sign it if required, and then add a summary. The document must be completed before the user can publish the send to PCF button to complete the process, and can push the send to PCF button to complete the process. So, and that's that button that's currently grayed out, but once it's completed, then you can go ahead and click that. You'll also notice there is a particular status. We can examine the PCF documents to view and track the overall status of the PCF documents. So it seems like, you know, one thing we want to note is it seems like once a year we have an outage that is at a higher level than we can control. Usually it's at the big Army level, and we have to push in tickets to various teams to troubleshoot the transmission of data, either due to some type of IP address routing issue or some other issue that happens at a higher level. And when that occurs, it takes a while for the PCF data to get caught back up in its transmissions. So please keep that in mind. We will do our best to make sure, and we have done our best to make sure to communicate these outages and to let you know when all of the data has been fully caught up. Usually James sends out the transmissions for those or one of our other staff members, and you'll see that information listed. So once you go through, and if you see that there is some type of transmission delay, you can communicate that to your users and let them know that the staff is working through it. It doesn't happen frequently, but at least once a year we notice it happens, either because of some type of issue that causes the hardware to go haywire, or the engineers are changing hardware around or something like that. So just keep in mind that that could occur. That's one of the gotchas with this as well. All right, and we'll go ahead and open the floor for any questions. Let me go ahead and unmute everyone. Okay, I'm not hearing any questions, so I'll go ahead and move on. So at this time, I want to touch on the import and export modules, submodules, starting the section. Okay, so this module includes the operations needed to bring external data into RMS 3 and export selected document packages. So this module was designed to make exporting documents from various document packages easier. So when we're looking at these overall import-export modules, we can go through and see the ease of import and export to various different sections of RMS. And we'll take a look at each one of these in turn. The first one we'll take a look at is the P2 section. So P2 imports, that's the USA's PMBP, or Project Management Business Process AIS. So all USA's contracts are linked to P2. This process is automated by a computer batch job, so no action is needed from the user. This module can also be used to view information about a specific contract in P2. So you can note that above, import P2. RMS now includes a server process which keeps all the districts up to date with the latest P2 data. So you can go through and take a look at that. So usually that's the message that you'll get. The import from another contract module was designed to allow the import of contract data from one contract to another. So if you are trying to import data from a contract that has specific submittals that you want in a new contract, then you can go ahead and do that if a contract exists within your district. The way that you would do that is you'd start by clicking on the blue copy from contract button. Once that's done, you'll select the contract that you want to copy data from, select the data you want to copy by clicking on the appropriate checkboxes, and then click on the Copy Selected Data button at the bottom of the screen. A warning pop-up box will appear. You can go ahead and click Yes to proceed or No to cancel moving forward with the copy. All right, and that covers that particular section as well. The next is the document package export. So the document package export module provides the ability to export documents from various document packages throughout RMS 3. The document packages are used throughout RMS 3 to facilitate the inclusion of supporting documents. Document packages are typically created after completion of the data entry of a record, and the system will create a new package and add a PDF copy of the form for the contractor to sign and submit to the government. So for this particular import, you'll import-export section, you'll go ahead and you'll click on the boxes to indicate and download the choices. Then you'll click the Get Documents and then select Download Folder. So essentially you'll be in your contract, and from within your contract, you'll navigate over to Import-Export. And once you're in Import-Export, you'll then start to choose your particular modules. And for all three, we'll be hitting these first three. So the first one is Import P2 is noted. That one is automatic, so you'll get this automatic message. Everything is abracadabra back there, so you don't have to worry about that. Click on the back, and then we'll click on Import from another contract. Once we click on Import from another contract, we'll select the contract, our source contract. And then once we select our source contract, we'll go ahead and choose OK. And then we'll select data to copy. So we can either check all, or we can check specific modules that we want copied. And then when we're all done, we'll click on Copy Selected Data. And then it'll copy that data to our current contract that we're in. And then our last one is our document package. So for that one, we'll select one or more document package areas that we want to get documents from. We'll select one or more documents, choose here. And then once we've selected the document package, daily reports package, we'll choose the folder that we want to save that information to. And then we'll go ahead and choose either all or whatever. We'll choose Get Documents. Once we choose that, we can choose our folder, and then we can choose OK. And then once we hit OK, it'll start to save it out. So in this module here, it kind of depends. So if we're clicking all, it'll make the QC daily reports grayed out. Each one of these has a particular set that will cause the other one to go inactive. So just things you got to look at once you're clicking them. So sometimes someone will click on something and then something else will gray out and they won't realize that they clicked on something that caused a reaction for it to get grayed out. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Anyway, once you've selected the module that you want to export, you'll go ahead and choose that Get Documents, select your folder, create the file name that you want to save it as, and then click OK, and it'll start to churn out all those documents. Okay, our next block that we're going to look at is the import QA deficiencies. And sometimes out in the field, someone may be entering deficiencies into RMS, providing the Excel template to track deficiencies that have been found. So any item that has not been performed or completed in accordance with the contract is considered a deficiency. So at this point, we can go through, take a look. We can download the import template. We can make sure the contract number, date, location, deficiency description is added to the import template. We can read the template instructions. Of course, we don't want to alter the template. If we alter the template, then we can have some issues. We'll select our QA rep. We'll click import deficiency items from the Excel button, and then we'll confirm, hit that confirmation message. We'll display, we'll click OK, and then we'll go ahead and import those items. Now, the pitfall with this module is that the user may have inadvertently edited the template. So that's the key here. If they edited the template, just download a new uncorrupted template and then transfer the data from the one template, the corrupted template, to the destination template, and then the import should work. The uncorrupted destination template and the import should work. The export mods list adds the ability to export a list of all the modifications for the contract. So obviously with this one, you can actually export your overall mods list. This particular screen is usually an issue when locating the file. So we'll go ahead and click on the export to file button. A save as screen will appear. We can select the location where we want to export, where we want our export to be saved, and then click on the save button once that's done. So we have our import deficiency screen. So right here, we can choose to download our template. It'll download our particular template for us. Once the template is downloaded, we can go through and enter our data, and then we can select on the QA rep that we're going to assign it to. And then once we've assigned it to our QA rep, then we can go ahead and choose to import. Once we import, we can then go ahead and choose which Excel file we want to bring in, and then we can go ahead and bring in that Excel file. The export mods list is essentially we're going to export the mods list. So the export list of contract changes to the mods list tab. We'll go ahead and choose to export to a file. We'll choose where we want that file to be saved, and then we can basically just choose save, and it'll export the list. And then it'll give us our pop-up that says use this file, Excel spreadsheet, Milcon CWE calculation funds. So that information has been saved. You'll need to open the file and then paste the copied contents into cell 19B on tab 3 of the mods list. So that basically gives us our information that is exported from our contract. And then we're going to skip the submittals and spec sections for right now. We're going to jump over to import real property. So the real property input template is used to create a batch input file to feed into RMS. The Excel format allows flexibility in getting the real data into RMS, both from a user familiarity standpoint with Excel and the editing capability available. So in Excel, you can basically cut and paste and insert rows, and you can do things at a faster level than you would be able to do in RMS specifically. But once it's done in Excel, then you can go ahead and import that data into the real property screen and use the options available. So the real property input template is used to create a batch input file to feed into RMS. The Excel format allows flexibility, as mentioned before, and then once you import it, you'll choose one of the import options. The overall template file looks as follows. The instructions on how to populate this template file. You basically right-click on the red area where it says button. You right-click on that, and then it'll pop up this information screen that'll essentially show you all of the information that you need to know on how to utilize that particular section. So essentially, this is where we're going to go. It's going to be download the template. From here, we're going to download that template. Once the template is downloaded, we can go ahead and edit our template with whatever data we want to add in there, corresponding to each cell and each row that we're entering. Now, one of the key things that we want to note, though, is this entry system right here, where we see overwrite existing real property or merge with existing real property. If this is a brand new contract and you are importing real property and you have not imported anything before, you can go ahead and choose overwrite, and it'll essentially overwrite the data. So in your case, no data exists, so it should be okay. However, if you're entering data and you're trying to add data to already existing real property information, you'll want to go ahead and choose merge. If you choose overwrite, it's going to remove all that data and wipe it out. The default is overwrite. So the default definitely is overwrite. So you want to make sure if your users are having trouble with this area to let them know, hey, make sure you choose merge. You'll also notice down here we have two buttons. One is import real property from Excel. The other one is export real property items to Excel. So usually I try to instruct users before they utilize this to export their real property items to Excel first, just so that they can have their information available to them in case something goes awry. All right, our next area is the submittal section, and we'll essentially be entering importing submittals, which also uses an Excel template. We can go ahead and click the download template button to download that Excel template. And once the template is ready, we can select where the template will be uploaded to, and then select either the overwrite existing submittals or merge with existing submittals. After we're all done, we can click on the import submittal register button as well. The submittal template file looks as follows. So you'll go through and you'll follow the instructions on how to fill out this template. And the same way that you did on the other template, you'll right click on the big red button, and essentially that will pop up the import submittals instructions. You'll just follow the instructions on how to import that particular template. As mentioned, we're still under import export. In this case, we're going to go to submittals. We're going to go ahead and download these submittals. Once the submittals are downloaded, then we can choose to import. However, you'll notice here we have our import to. This tells us where you want to import it to. Some contracts may have multiple registers, so you might want to import that Excel template to a different register. So you just have to make sure that you're importing it to the correct register. One thing in the multiple register scenario, or even the single register scenario, is if you're overriding existing submittals. So you might already have data in your 01 main register, but in your 02, that's your new one that you want to import records to. Just make sure that the user selected their 02 instead of the 01 so that it doesn't overwrite their data. It's, like I said, it's pretty simple, but it's a step that sometimes gets missed because of its simplicity. So just want to make sure to call that to your attention, so that if you're working with a user that's saying, hey, I had a whole bunch of submittals, but they're all gone, you can ask, hey, did you just do an import? Yeah, but I did it to the other register. Well, maybe you did it to the register you didn't want to import it to. So we just have to make sure to keep track of the way that they're doing their imports and making sure that they're either choosing the proper element, either overwrite or merge. And then once they choose that, they can then go ahead and choose import submittals, choose their file, and then import that. All right, the next import option we're going to look at is the Specs Intact, which is an automated software program that RMS is allowed to use that helps in preparing standardized facility construction specifications. The Specs Intact file can be used to import information into RMS submittal register. The information can then be bulk loaded into RMS, into the RMS submittal register. All right, so that's the Specs Intact software that people are using when they're dealing with the Specs Intact import. So essentially, you'll go here, you'll download that Specs Intact software, and that can be found in specsintact.ksc.nasa.gov is where you can get that Specs Intact software from. And if you didn't get the links, it's okay. You should be able to get the links from off of the video as well. Or if you need them, you can also contact support and we can get you the links for those specific areas as well. But once you have Specs Intact and you go through and you create your file, you're now ready to import that file. You'll go ahead and click Add to add your Specs Intact file. You'll get a list of prior loaded Specs Intact files, which will be displayed in the module here. You'll click Add and select the file to load. Once the file is loaded, you can then go through and follow the information that's listed. You can remove any duplicative information from the Specs Intact file, or the user, if they unintentionally replaced an already existing submittal register, producing transmittals that are now unlinked for their submittal items. So essentially, if they have their original submittal items, if they re-import that, and then we do have a module which allows them to relink, they can relink their modules back again. But hopefully they chose the right option and they chose to merge them in. So in any case, you'll see there's 4 tabs at the top here. Submittal items from Specs and Tact files are displayed within these submittal items. We have our button, which is click to select the submittal register that you want to import to. And then you can select the import option, either merge or replace. Then we have the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th tabs showing the sections, and then the submittal sections are displayed. We have the reviewers sections are displayed as well. And then we have the raw Specs and Tact file, so what the actual Specs and Tact file looks like. So some people might go in and they might want to change a couple of things within the file itself before they do their import. They can go ahead and change that and then choose to do the import within the Specs and Tact file. And Specs and Tact file listed here. So we have our Specs and Tact files here, and then we can see each one of our Specs and Tact files and the associated information with each one of these Specs and Tact file as well. So we can choose our register. So if we have multiple registers, we can choose the register we want to import that Specs and Tact file to. And then once that's done, it'll be displayed up here. And then we can choose the option whether or not to merge into our prospective register or replace into that register. Clicking on these sections, this allows you to validate that you're bringing in the data that you believe you're bringing in. All right, and then next is going to be our standard data exchange format. So that's a set of rules defined by the USACE as what information should be contained in specific rows or columns to meet the information and formatting guidelines that are set forth by the USACE for upcoming information that flows into the system. The NAS or SDEF or Network Analysis System and Standard Data Exchange Format was designed to be able to import contractor schedule data as well as some financial data into RMS with the use of an SDEF file or Standard Data Exchange Format file. The SDEF file, as mentioned, is a text file that contains information exported from Primavera. We used to have other scheduling package that used it, but now Primavera is pretty much the main one that uses it. There are a few other ones that are still around. I believe Microsoft Project, they have a third-party user that has created a tool. We do have the links on that on our website, so you can check that out from there as well. But for right now, pretty much everyone is using Primavera, and Primavera is kind of like the flagship that everyone's using. The SDEF file itself is divided into 9 parts, each part being called a record. The 9 records are volume, project, calendar, holiday, activity, precedence, unit cost, progress, and file end data. When you're ready to import your NAS SDEF file, you'll go ahead and click on Import Export and then choose NAS SDEF, Network Analysis System. And then the SDEF selection view will pop up. If the NAS SDEF files have been previously imported into RMS, the list will be displayed. You can go ahead and click Add to import a new file. Now, when you see the SDEF selection list, you can view the list of all of the SDEF files previously uploaded to RMS. Each row displays a few columns of data for quick reference, and the data date, as indicated on the SDEF itself, the schedule type is manually indicated when uploading the file. The date imported, created automatically when the file is originally imported, and then the date invoice imported when the financial data from the SDEF was imported into an invoice. So the SDEF file is the file name and the approval status. And then importing the data, select the add, edit, and delete buttons in the upper left-hand corner of the selection view. Now, when you click on the add button, that will initiate the SDEF data file import wizard. And from the add view, you can click on the select file button to initiate the Windows open dialog and then locate your SDEF file that you're going to be importing. After you locate the file, you can click on open and then click the next in the bottom right-hand corner of the add view. And then after clicking next, you'll go ahead and select the information about the file. It'll be displayed on your screen. And then the file type is either preliminary, initial, impact schedule, rebaseline schedule, monthly update, recovery schedule, or completion schedule. The data date is filled automatically with the information extracted from the file. The file version is a subjective numbering system, which is determined by the contract as the project ID. And then after the file information is completed, you can click Finish in the bottom right-hand corner of the view. So once the Finish button is clicked, RMS will open the edit view, and then you'll be able to display your information. Now, a quick note for existing SDEF files, this view is also accessible by selecting an SDEF file on the selection view and then by clicking Edit or simply double-clicking on the file itself. So once you get to the overall screen, you can go ahead and select it on the SDEF view, and you can double-click it as well. You'll notice on the SDEF view, all of the generalized information on the list. You can go through and view all of those generalized information. You'll see that the activities, calendars, and SDEF each have a tab on the bottom as well. Each one of those tabs will showcase the information that is listed. All right, so we actually have a demo of this one here, and I'll just walk you through the demo, basically multiple parts, but so that you can see the whole thing. All right, so you'll start off on the contractor side. The contractor will essentially go ahead and select their contract that they would like to utilize. Once they've selected their contract, they'll go ahead and go to the import-export section, and then they'll go ahead and choose NAS SDEF. Once they're in the NAS SDEF section, they will then select or add a new file to import. As you can see, they have all their information listed there. They'll go through and they'll select their file, select their sdef.txt file, and then they'll choose the next button. They'll select their file type, which in this case will be their preliminary. Everything was basically selected automatically from that particular screen. And then from this screen, you'll get all the information that's been brought in from that SDEF file as well. You'll be able to navigate to the 3 tabs to see if all of the information is suitable for import. Once it's all done and you're done with your particular review, you can then proceed up top in the upper right-hand area and then go ahead and start to look at importing your data or sending that data over. From the calendar view, the 3 tabs area, you can go ahead and select and choose to review each one of the data elements that you're bringing in. Calendars will show the calendar view information, and then the activities will show the activity information. The SDEF file will show the raw SDEF file information. Once you're all done, you'll go ahead and select the request acceptance to import that schedule. This schedule, that'll be sent over to the government. Once it's sent over to the government will then come in and they will start their process. And the government will look through their list, and then they'll say, oh, I've got a new preliminary file here that I need to review and accept. So acceptance requested. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and double click on that file. And once I double click on that file, now it's my turn as the government personnel to go ahead and review all the information. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and take a look. I'm going to preview the data that's coming in. We'll notice a lot of the changes. The one red at the top, it says activity not found in SDEF. This activity will be deleted. So you're bringing in a schedule that basically does not have an activity that exists. So it's going to remove that particular activity. So you'll just go through there and make sure that you know or can see all the stuff that you want. You'll accept the schedule once you've approved everything. Once the government has approved all the data that the contractor says that they have added, you'll then go through and accept it. Once it's accepted, the contractor will then come back in. They'll go ahead and preview their data on their side and make sure that everything lines up appropriately. And once everything is all lined up, they'll go ahead and select import SDEF. Then they'll click OK or yes on that notification button, and then import into contract is complete. We'll then go ahead and click OK, and then our SDEF module has now been completed. So if you want to watch that a little bit, if you watch that a little bit more, you can go ahead and head over to our video site as well, and then you can take a look at that demo on our video site. One note that we want to add for the NAS activity schedule, it is critical that the actual start and actual finish activity dates in NAS schedule are the same dates added to actual activity start and finish dates entered in the QC daily reports. If the dates aren't the same, RMS won't import. So I just want to go ahead and mention that real briefly because there is sometimes an issue with that. So if we come over here, if we go to contract setup, And in contract setup, we go to submittals and schedules. There's a little schedule information tab, which is down here. And we have contractor schedule type. We're importing late start finish date from the NAS system. And then there's a box down here that says requires the contractor to use actual start and finish dates from the QC reports in the NAS. If this is checked, then essentially all the dates have to match before the import can be approved. So we want to make sure that that module, if that is checked, that's one of the issues that can pop up or one of the gotchas. So just want to make sure that if they have that checked, that they're reviewing and making sure all their dates match. Once our data and information has been input, we can then go through and we can view our schedule comparison report. And our schedule comparison report will allow us to review two of our schedules, the current data and our preliminary schedule that we have, and then we can go ahead and compare those particular reports from there as well. And then from here, we can go ahead and compare our activity schedules as they came in, contractor start, finish, activity progress, all that data we can go through and compare, making sure that the information that we indeed want to import is matching and corresponding correctly. Okay, and that covers that module. So we'll go ahead and open it up for any questions. I saw some questions were flying around in the chat.
Well, let's go ahead and answer the first question regarding using P6 for Microsoft Project. So, Paul, you had the answer for that one?
Sure. RMS, we do not officially support any third-party options for Microsoft Project. In the past, there's been several companies that have come in and used Microsoft Project to export out to SDEF. We cannot officially recommend any of them. If you Google them, you might find them. However, this was back in the day of Primavera 3. That they were a lot more popular back then. Right now, Primavera 6 is one of the Primavera Contractor, I believe, is one of the ones that we support officially. So Primavera will pop out an SDEF.txt file. RMS will import that. Anything outside of that is not supported by RMS, and we can't officially recommend it. But as long as you get the exact SDEF.txt file format, then RMS will ingest that and put it into the contract. And then one of the other questions was, if you import the SDEF file and the actual dates are different in the daily reports, will RMS give you an error message? RMS won't give you an error message, but it will let you know what data inside of RMS does not match the data in the SDEF file. So when you go to do the SDEF import in RMS, it'll give you here's what it's going to look like when you import that SDEF file. And anything in red will let you know that it changes, whether or not the data is the same, whether or not the data will be overwritten or whatnot. Usually when you're doing an SDEF import, RMS treats that SDEF file as the system of record. So anything in RMS that's not in the SDEF file will get wiped out or changed from the SDEF file. But it will let you know when you do that import. It won't be a pop-up warning, but it will be a red, hey, this is going to change on the comparison sheet when you do the SDEF import. And then, has there been any revisions or corrections? If there's problems with the comparison report feature that you've experienced, if you could send that our way, that'd be great. I personally don't know of any issues with that, but if there are issues with that, please let us know. When you're doing the SDEF import, all the data is included in the SDEF file, right? It's comma delimited. Everything in that file, RMS will take and ingest that into RMS. It's programmed to say, okay, if something's in RMS that isn't in the SDEF file, it gets wiped out. So that's why whenever we say, hey, if there's a problem with your SDEF file, don't change it in RMS, change it in Primavera, because that's where you'll get it into RMS. Hopefully that answered that question. But yeah, if you're definitely having problems with the comparison report feature, let us know. But as far as corrections or revisions, I know of none recently, so it probably hasn't changed.
From the New York district. Yeah, I had previously sent in a ticket request. It was a while ago when we used the comparison report, the dates that were being published didn't line up with the heading for late dates was given early dates. So there were some inaccuracies in the information that was getting printed out. I'll resend the request I had, but because of that, we had stopped using the comparison report because it really wasn't given correct information.
Oh, okay. You're talking about the report. So you're not talking about when you do the SDEF import and it has that
No,
comparison screen. Okay, got it, got it, got it.
it's the
Okay,
comparison report. Yeah, the
okay.
information coming out of that report was not accurate when you go back into the two schedules that you're comparing.
Got it. Okay. I'll take a note to Paul and check that out. And that it's definitely possible. I know that report is ancient. It's so it probably needs to be updated. So what we'll do is we'll add that to our bug list, which I'm sure we've already done if you've added the ticket, but I'll double check on that just to make sure. So thank you for taking the time to let us know.
No problem. Thank you.
And thanks to everyone who submitted those questions. And yes, just to reiterate what Paul said. Back in the day when RMS was first importing NAS and SDEF and the SDEF files, there used to be more programs that were utilizing those, such as Aldergraph, PPMS 80, Microsoft Project. However, Primavera was the only company that actually came to the government and said, "Hey, we want you to check and validate our file." So they were the ones who basically validated their file against the RMS system. So they were the ones that we kind of adopted and basically approved. None of the other companies essentially came to us and said, "Hey, test our file, make sure it's right." So essentially, that's why we say, okay, Primavera is kind of like the more gold standard when it comes to SDEF and SDEF imports. However, that's not to say that the other programs can't work as long as they get in that SDEF format, the required format that we have, and we have the ER1-1-11 document that states how they can do that. If it gets into that format, we'll definitely import it. Setting up a new contract. All right, so essentially, we just want to make sure when we're setting up a new contract that we do everything in order. So after selecting your district, make sure you have the display contracts button selected. And if you have display projects selected, only the edit button will show. So sometimes, depending on the view of the screen, sometimes users are saying, "I can't add a contract. Why can't I add a contract?" And that's referring to when they're on this screen, we have the add, edit, and archive buttons that are listed here. But down here, there's two options: display contracts and then display projects. If they have display projects list shown here, that option is radio button is checked or selected. You'll notice that the add button goes away. There's no add here. So if a user is saying, "Hey, I don't have add," it's either their roles don't allow them to add or they're on this option that says display projects. So really quickly, if you check that and they're on display contracts, the add button should show. And if they have the proper privileges to add a contract, the add button will show as well. So that's one of the gotchas for that particular screen. So just keep that in mind when dealing with the users if they're saying that they can't see the add button. When the add button is shown, though, then you can go ahead and click the add button itself, and that'll bring up the information to enter a new contract. So you can go ahead and enter the title for the new contract and then change the office to make the office that will be administering the contract, basically assign the new office. Once the information is entered, you can select OK. After clicking OK, the contract menu screen will be displayed. And then once the contract menu screen is displayed, you can go ahead and click on the contract description, which is going to be our first stop. And matching the contract description, we can go through and enter the following fields: fiscal year, contract short title, contract number, delivery order number, and contract long title. Just a note, the contract number and delivery number must match exactly within CFM. So if they don't match, CFM's info cannot be downloaded. You will not be able to, you will be able to come back and fix it, but you just got to make sure that you have all the information that's required. Usually the contract number is broken up into several parts, and that's referred to as the DODAC, the Department of Defense Activity Address Code, and it's usually segmented into the enterprise identifier. That's like the W912H9 or the the other DODAC prefixes, then the year, and then the procurement instrument code, which for most of these are C for contract, and then the serialized identifiers at the end. So that's usually how the contract number is broken up. Once that information is done, we can then go ahead and we can start to enter all of the other information on the district contract description. We can enter the fields, contract description, primary fund type, contracting method, contract location, customer. We can enter all those optional fields as well. And once the information has all been entered, we can then go ahead and click the back button to save that data. So the next step after we're done with the contract description screen is to jump over to the contract setup screen. And once we're in the contract setup screen, we'll go ahead and enter information there as well. One thing that we want to call out on the contract setup screen is that's where you'll be entering the CFM's database name that you'll be associating this contract with in order for the downloads to occur for CFMs. So the default entries may change based on your office or your office policy. So you can go through and just make sure that you're selecting the right office for your CFM's database name as well. You can go ahead and use CFMs for downloading finances and uploading. So that's the check mark that's at the top. If you're not going to be using CFMs, you must uncheck that box. You can go ahead and uncheck it. The CFM's database name field, that's basically just making sure your database name matches the CFM's database name where you will be pulling financial data from. Will this contract be linked to P2? If yes, you're going to go ahead and keep this box checked. Keep that box checked. The default is yes, so you can just go ahead and leave it yes. Use P2 data prior to award. RMS can use P2 data for pre-award milestones, so usually that box is left checked as well. Use only one phase. If you check this box, RMS will treat a multi-phase P2 project as one phase. So this box is, the default is leaving it unchecked, so you can just leave it unchecked and it'll basically track correctly. Allow government to enter contract data. That's not recommended. So import that contractor. Basically, we just want to make sure that the contractor imports or enters their information. So it's important that the contractor enter this data and keep that data up to date, because that's the overall end goal. We want to make sure that the contractor is managing their data, and then the government is basically providing that quality check to make sure that all the data is entered correctly and not taking the time to re-input all that information. Leave that to the contractor. We also have track insurance, track payrolls, track labor, requires a DD 1354. These are fields that are just used for custom reporting, so do not alter except possibly the category codes for. So we can change the CAT codes to match the using service. So for example, Army, Navy, etc. So if your CAT code does not show up in the drop-down menu, you need to check the enable fiscal year 2022, or in this case, FY22 for DD 1354, which is available for all contracts. So that's what that little checkbox is for. Send docs to PCF. There is an option to not include to PCF, used in very rare cases though. So you may want to consult your district POC. In this case though, the default is just checked, so you can go ahead and leave it checked. RMS 2.3 and QCS has been sunset. So RMS 2.3 is sunset. So these options will be removed in future releases of RMS. So those particular options, you can pretty much ignore those and leave those as is. When we get to our next, we're trying to determine how to track funding at this point. So this is kind of a little option that's kind of a gotcha as well. So we'll take a little bit of time to explain each one of these. So there's three options that we can choose from. The track funding at funding account level. So this is normal RMS setup. So this is the default for RMS funding. So this option gives you the most control, but requires the most data entry of all the options, but you can maintain each funding account. Track funding at a project level. This computes obligation amounts for payment based on available funds. RMS will treat separate funding as one and will prorate payments based on the amounts of funds available. So just keep that in mind if you're going to choose that particular option. And then the third option is funding at a project level. And essentially that's manually enter obligation amounts for the payment. So users are required to enter obligation amounts manually for each payment. So quick note on this, do not use project level funding unless required. So the default is usually the one that we check, which is the first one, track funding at funding account level. That's the default. So that's the one we recommend. However, depending on what your district is calling for or that particular contract is calling for, you have the other two options to choose from as well. So once funding has been set and payments processed, do not alter payment methodology. It could result in data loss. So if you opt to change funding methods, you will see this warning screen. Essentially, this warning screen will pop up and it will require you to sign the information. So if your CAC is in, then it'll take your CAC's digital signature and it'll sign it. It's very important that you understand, or that the users understand, that if they're going to change funding, there could be data loss. We at the RMS Center, we want to make sure that you're aware of that. So we put that confirmation in here, and then we also leave it in here just for the simple fact of tracking, so we can go back and see, okay, who changed it on what date, and then we can find out the reason why it was changed, and then it's essentially for research, so that we can get down to the bottom line if any data loss did occur. The next selection, payment modifications tab, is enter the ACO modifications information and the CO. So we can enter the administrative contracting officer's information, and then the contracting officer can enter their information there. Check the progress payments, allow additional earnings not included in activity earnings. So you can check that box to allow the contractor to bill for stored materials and performance and payment bonds. So this also needs to be checked if the contractor is not going to be using a pay activity for these items. So keep that in mind as well. So you can check include all activities on prompt payment document. You can check that button to see all activities for the contract on every invoice, regardless of what is billed. So a quick note on this is that obligations for payment will be populated once the CFM's finances have been downloaded. So just a quick note on that. Once the CFM's obligation has been downloaded, the obligation for payment will be populated. One note that we want to keep in mind here, even though we're going through and once the payment modification tab has been completed and set up, we can select the quality assurance tab, enter the following field. You can select project engineer, on-site COR, and then number of QA shifts, chief QA rep shift 1, time extensions due. We can select all that information, unusual severe weather, but there's a quick note, QA report types only needs to be changed if it is different from the default. So alternate QA shift 1 only needs to be populated if there is a designated alternate. So if you don't have an alternate, you don't need to change that. So you don't need to put the same person there twice. So the alternate is for the alternate. So if you have the same person as QA chief QA rep shift 1, don't put them as alternate QA rep shift 2. So that's just something to keep in mind. We can next go to the submittals schedule tab. We can enter the review periods for the appropriate type of submittal types and the default number of copies that the contractor is required. When entering this information, when entering this information into the default government reviewer, it will populate the submittal register automatically with the individual's name and will default the transmittals to their office address. So we can check that the address transmittal 4025 packages 2 is set to the office address that should appear on the ENG 4025. So if we look on the top section, we have the government review periods. Each one of those are set for government approval, for information only, designer of record approval. We have the government conformance review of design, and then we have designer of record approval and government conformance review of design, and then we have the designer of record approval and government approval. And then one that's not noted there is sustainable notebook. That one is just, it doesn't need a review period, so that's why it's not listed. If you choose that particular option for your submittal on the submittal screen, just be aware that there is no default review period for that or default number of copies for that. So sustainable notebook has none of that. The default government reviewer, as noted above, you'll go ahead and select that. And then the address transmittal 4025 packages 2, you'll go ahead and select that as well. Now, as mentioned previously, one of the gotchas is that there could be delays in syncing the payments and coordinating the submittals to the connecting activities if the imported NAS does not match. And essentially, we have a checkbox there that requires the contractor to use actual start and finish dates from the QC reports on the NAS. So basically, this is saying if my QA report does not match the incoming NAS that's bringing in for those particular dates, it will not allow an import. So the records have to match when they're coming in. If that's not checked, then it'll just go ahead and bring in that data for you automatically. General steps to setting up a contract is to add the contract and then complete information from the contract setup menu. We can then go ahead and go to the administration funding, the payment modifications, the quality assurance, the submittal schedule, And then if dredging is required, we'll also proceed there. All right, and then we have our information listed. All right, and then from there, we can go ahead and choose add. We'll go ahead and ignore these for right now. This will be in a different training, upcoming training, but we can go ahead and enter our title. We can also choose here to copy data from another contract if we want to do that. You can choose OK, and then it'll basically add our contract for us. And once the contract is added, we're pretty much just going to go to two main sections under administration: the administration, contract description, and then from there we can go ahead and enter our information. And then from here, this is where we can enter our particular data. So sometimes you'll see the contract number format as something like DACA. As mentioned before, the breakdown includes all of the information for the DODAC, or we might see that type of information as such. But in any case, whichever one we choose, we can go ahead and enter them. If the contract number is entered in CFMS without dashes, then go ahead and take out the dashes. If the contract number is entered in CFMS with a delivery order number of N/A, then we want to make sure to include N/A. Or if it's just NA, or if it has an actual delivery order number, we want to include that as well. So we want to match it exactly within whatever is in CFMS. We want to match it exactly. All right, and then we can go ahead and enter our title, our fiscal year. And then once we're all done, we can go through and start to process all the other information down here, enter our funding type, whatever our funding type is going to be, and enter our contracting methods, whatever that's going to be. I'm just choosing it random, but obviously whoever's doing it on the job will go ahead and enter the appropriate information. Enter my test contract. If I'm going to do wage determination, I can go ahead and enter that. Latitude, longitude, wage determination date, bid open date, our BIM compliant, architect, engineer, design cost, all the information here. Contract requires small business plan, includes COVID-19 DFARS, deviation, all that information can be entered. Once we're all done entering that information, we'll swivel over to contract setup, and then we'll start entering our contract setup information. And you'll notice in our contract setup, we have administration. These are all the defaults. So it already knew my CFMS database was under Baltimore district, so it's just chose Baltimore district. If I wanted a different office, a different district that I'm working with, then I'll go ahead and choose that particular district. My defaults is, will this contract be linked to P2? Got all my P2 information here for default, so I'm just going to leave that. And then allow government to enter contractor data. That's unchecked as default. We want the contractor to enter their own data, and it's the government that'll save us time. So we'll go ahead and utilize that data and review it to make sure it's right, and then have the contractor correct it if it's incorrect. We'll then enter our end payrolls date, end payrolls milestone information, whenever that's going to be, and then we can enter our date there. Track labor interviews, review, requires DD 1354, all that information can be entered, the category information, and then right here, enable fiscal year 2022. This is defaulted, so basically just leave it defaulted on, but we'll show that in another training what this is for, so just keep that in mind. And then down here is our funding methods. The default is the first one, which is track the funding at funding account level, pre-plan obligations for payment on all CLINs. And then we have the other two information items there that we discussed. Once we're done with that, we can then navigate to each one of the tabs here, and then we can enter our information appropriately for each tab that we have. Quality assurance, we can enter that information there as well, choosing all of our applicable data. And then same thing here, we can enter our information here. Some people wonder where to enter their additional submittal registers. They can enter it here if they want to add a secondary register. They can enter that there. And now they'll have 2 registers within the system. And then from there, the submittals, we can go through and enter our overall review periods for each one of the sections. And then we can enter our contractor resubmittal period, our default, and then our default number of copies that are required for each one of the options there, each one of the classifications. And then we can enter our default government reviewer, from there as well. And then whatever address we're going to use, go ahead and enter that there. And that's the to address, so where it'll go. And then this is the important part here. If we're going to be using NAS SDEF, we'll choose this one for NAS. If we're going to be entering our dates manually, we'll choose this one, manually enter start finish dates. And then here is the gotcha, requires the contractor to use actual start and finish dates from QC reports on the NAS. So essentially your start and finish dates, that basically means that the contractor has been entering their start and finish dates in the QC reports, and then they've been using those same dates and entering them in the NAS. So when they come in, they should match. And then the updated information will also come in as well. And then also our weather modification, we can go through and select that. And then if need be, we have dredging. We can enter our dredging information if we're going to track our dredging. And then that's pretty much it. Obviously, if we're doing financial information, we'll go to finances and enter our finance data, enter our submittals and other things like that. But overall, to set up the contract, contracting officers or the specialists, they'll go in and they'll set up those two sections there as the overall flow. All right, and with that, we can open the floor for any questions. I know that there were some questions that came up.
I did have one question for you on the SDEF and QC sections. So if the contractor QC enters a daily activity, it doesn't match the SDEF, will it allow that report to be generated in the QC section, or is it backwards that the updated schedule will not be allowed to be imported?
Okay, so assuming that you're asking about the daily activity, you're talking about pay activity, right? So if I use the SDEF, if I use Primavera and I do an SDEF import and I realize, hey, there's a pay activity that isn't there that should have been there, and I go into RMS and I go and add that pay activity, the next time I do an SDEF import, I'm going to lose that pay activity. So what we usually tell people to do is, hey, if there's something missing, yeah, you can manually add it, but it's better to add it to Primavera and do another SDEF import than it is to add it to RMS, continue on, and then lose that next time you do an SDEF import the next month whenever you do the SDEF import. Is that what you were asking when you said daily activity?
Yes, as they're tracking their actual starts and actual finishes, if the contractor happens to slip, and then they do another update with their updated schedule, if any changes are made, those previous activities or future activities. So I think you covered it. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Yep. So as long as they're not planning on doing another SDEF import, if that was the case, yeah, they can add it to RMS. And then, yeah, it'll allow them to go in and utilize that data inside of the daily report. And then obviously if they complete that daily report, it's a snapshot of the data, right? So, but yeah, I highly recommend anything that comes from Primavera, make another change in Primavera, do another SDEF import. It's not going to hurt if you say you do an SDEF import and then a couple days later you realize, oh, I forgot to add this, and then do another SDEF import. RMS will let you know, hey, here's what's changing if you do the SDEF import. So it's perfectly fine to do a whole bunch of those if you want.
Copy, thank you.
Yeah, so essentially just keep in mind that, as Paul mentioned, we're treating, if you're doing a NAS SDEF, we're treating that as the source record. So if you've got a NAS SDEF selected, we're treating it as a source record. So as mentioned previously on that particular screen, we do have the options screen that is set up under contract setup. I think we discussed it several times already, but do it one more time again. So down here under schedule, we do have that set up here. So if this is selected, obviously we're going to treat Primavera or whoever is controlling that NAS record, that SDEF record, as the source of record. So as Paul mentioned, yeah, you just make sure that record is updated. And then right here requires the contractor to use actual start and finish dates from the QC reports. If that is checked, that constrains it so that when the contractor is importing their data, their SDEF dates must match their actual entered dates that are inside of RMS as well. So just some things to keep in mind when we're going over that area. We'll go ahead and transition to our next section. That's going to be RMS P2 interface section that we're going to jump into. And our RMS interface section, after logging into RMS and selecting the desired contract, we select the administration tab and then the P2 projects module. And from there, we jump into the P2 access from administration module mode. And from there, we can follow our steps as previously noted. Administration module is where all administration functions are located. Contract setup, new contract actions, set up prime contractor and contractor's administrator, set up the contract description, contract number, set up the weather, days, submittal register, select manual or NAS schedule, etc. And then the P2 linkings can be done here as well. We'll go through, do P2 projects and linked projects to make sure that all of that data is indeed being tracked. It is recommended that the PAs, the project administrators, link RMS contracts to P2 numbers and set up contract obligation amounts for each funding account under contract funding tab. So under that contract funding tab, you go ahead and set that up. And then you set up the award contract amount under the project funding tab as well. And then set up the primary fund type under the contract description module. So those are the areas that we go ahead and highlight. So we have the assigned PDT members after that's completed. And those are the project managers, the project engineers, the resident engineers, then the quality assurance reps or the specialists. And then we have the contract file folders. We can go through and set that up. And then the contract status should be kept up to date throughout the construction phase until final payment. In this case, we're going to jump back up and we're going to take a look at P2, that particular process. So when we first get in, that module links to the P2 projects to RMS contracts that are already created. So we can click add and then select the correct P2 code and task code to link to the RMS contract. And then a quick note, it's preferred for the PA to link the appropriate P2 code and task code after uploading CFM's finances. So it's preferred for, we prefer it as the RMS center if you would do that after you've done upload to CFM finances to RMS 3. The project administrator goes to contract funding tab, and then for each funding account, selects the appropriate P2 code and adds the contract amounts. The task status, milestone events, and cost time growth data will come over from P2 to RMS 3 prior to contract award. Then after construction award, this data in RMS will feed into P2. Now, there are some common errors. P2 project not displayed in the lookup field. Go ahead and check to ensure that the project was set up correctly in P2. We can go ahead and see the tutorial video. So I just want to bring that up real quick because there are some couple of gotchas that we want to be mindful of. All right, so this is going over linking P2 contracts. All right, so essentially it talks about what P2 is, list of requirements for P2. You can see at the project level, RMS to P2 and P2 to RMS, data interchange, and then the linking P2 projects to contracts. So it talks about that a little bit. We go over the actual P2, what is P2? We'll skip that for right now, and we'll jump over to the scope information. So the P2 linking important notes that we want to keep in mind is that RMS codes need to be associated with the project, like RMS _A, RMS contract, RMS _M _ unknowns, milestone codes, etc. And the status of the project needs to be open, active, and not closed. The third thing we need to remember to keep in mind is that the dollar amount resources assigned to the project needs to be greater than 1 cent. So 1 cent is the designation to ignore it. The task organization needs to be assigned so we can find it, usually associated with a particular office. So those are the things that we need to keep in mind. I've got that on the recording here, but if we need to refer back to it, we can go ahead and take a look at that. So bring that back down here. All right, but that video is there for you guys to take a look at as well. So we'll go ahead and hit the major points now. So after logging into RMS and selecting the desired contract, you can select the administration tab and then to the contract status. And one of the next details associated with P2 is going to be that contract status screen. And essentially we'll jump into project engineers. Looking at the project engineers, they should update the contract status monthly until final payment. Data uploads to P2 if linked for upward reporting. So we can do that by clicking on the contract status data field and selecting the status code that reflects the current phase or status of the contract until the final payment is complete. Select the primary delay code for this contract, and we can update that each month as well. And then we have the remarks short field is the primarily for the PM. The enter remarks for customer to see under issues customer. Remarks will be in P2 reports where customer can view each one of those remarks as well. And then in issues USACE, update prior to monthly PRB. So you can enter the date in issues remarks as of when the update was taking place. So the milestone schedule and monthly placement can be found on the schedules tab. Now the next spot that we will go and take a look at is under local office. So we can click on local office, and then under local office, we can see that the interface schedule is set up, and there's two modules. One, import finances from CFMS, that is set up there, and then import projects from P2, that is set up there. So that shows the P2 import time, and it defers to the local policy for the user. The next place that we take a look at is the import P2, and that module is automatic, as mentioned before when we took a look at the import export section. So this is what you'll usually find when you go to that particular module as well. So RMS includes the server process, which keeps all districts up to date with the latest P2 data. There's no need to manually import P2 data or schedule and import time. So that's done for you automatically. And with that, that concludes that P2 section. And do we have any questions regarding that? So if there's no questions, this is going to conclude training. So I'll go ahead and turn it back over to my management team to close us out.
Thank you all for coming. Please don't hesitate to tell others the purpose of this course so we can get proper attendance and help educate, the RMS users and admin support team. Thank you.